My parents punished me for being born with low testosterone by giving everything to my sister. When I was 12, she got a $2,000 bike for Christmas, while I got a pink shirt that said, Jess's little bro. They thought destroying my self-worth would fix me, but when I finally started dating someone at 25, they did something that made me realize their cruelty had no limits. My parents punished me for being born with a disability. When I was only 4, I was tested because they noticed something was off and they noticed I had considerably lower levels of testosterone. So that meant using my older sister to fix it. One Christmas, I was 12 at the time, and my sister Jess was 15, and the both of us wanted some new bikes. Jess obviously got what she wanted. It was this huge, beautiful purple road bike with all the bells and whistles. All I got was a tight pink t-shirt that said, Jess's little bro. My parents figured that if they destroyed my self-worth, I would take it upon myself to rebuild myself, rising my testosterone levels and reclaiming my masculinity. But as you can probably guess, since I'm writing a Reddit story, their method backfired hard. I became ever more depressed and anxious the more they bullied me, except they didn't care anymore. Somewhere along the line, their cure turned into harsh favoritism, borderline emotional neglect. One time in school, Jess got a B- on her report card. My parents paid for a custom banner to be put on the house. On it read the words, our daughter got a B- with a picture of her face at the end. And when I came home with straight A's, guess what I got? I'll give you a hint. It's 2 words, and it starts with Jack and ends with Shati. And if you guessed Jack Sheet, you were wrong, because it's even less than that. Both my parents trashed my room for not getting straight A+. After that, almost nothing surprised me anymore. Even when I got accepted to a solid university with a partial scholarship, my parents called me their biggest disappointment for not getting a full scholarship. Meanwhile, Jess practically flunked out and used the excuse of wanting to take a gap year that turned into 5. And to celebrate, they threw her a party and bought her a new laptop for her creative journey. But then came one of the only, slightly better parts of this story. I managed to move out as soon as possible, working multiple jobs while taking classes to support myself. But when I couldn't afford to come home for Thanksgiving one year, my father said, well, I guess your priorities are elsewhere. Even after creating distance, family gatherings were torture sessions of subtle digs. Still at that starter job, Jess is thinking about starting her own boutique. She's so entrepreneurial. At my graduation, which they arrived late to, my father's first comment was, 4 years for that degree? Seems like a lot of time for what you'll be doing. What made it worse was watching them fawn over Jess, who decided to wear the most extravagant dress possible to the ceremony so she could be the center of attention. Despite everything, I tried maintaining a relationship with Jess. She was still my sister, but it was completely one-sided. I'd reach out and she'd either ignore me or somehow turn every conversation into a competition. If I got a promotion, she suddenly had an amazing opportunity on the horizon. If I started dating someone, she'd immediately be in a serious relationship. Once, after not hearing from her for months, I called to share news about a significant promotion. Hey Jess, guess what? I got promoted to senior analyst. There was a pause before she responded. Okay, anyway, I just got approached by this amazing startup. The salary is probably more than you'll ever make. Of course, the position she mentioned never existed. And when I finally landed my dream job after years of hard work, I made the mistake of mentioning it at a family dinner. Guys, I just got my dream job and okay, but did you hear about Jess? My mom immediately interrupted. She met a successful entrepreneur with connections everywhere. That man turned out to be Dwight. He wasn't a successful entrepreneur. He worked in sales at a mid-sized paper company. But the way my parents talked about him, you'd think he was the next Elon Musk. Their wedding was an extravagant affair that my parents spared no expense for. Meanwhile, I was still paying off my student loans. But then I met one of Jess's short-term friends. And what happened next shifted the family dynamic forever because Jess was not happy. I can't tell you the explanation in this short video. I met Catherine at my cousin's engagement party of all places. She was standing by the dessert table looking uncomfortable in a way that felt familiar. When our eyes met, her face went through a series of expressions. Recognition, surprise, then something like concern. She approached me hesitantly. I recognized her immediately as one of Jess's college friends who had mysteriously disappeared from her social circle years ago. Catherine had always been different from Jess's usual crowd, quieter, more genuine, less interested in the constant competition my sister thrived on. We started talking, and within minutes it felt like we'd known each other forever. She laughed at my terrible jokes about the overly fancy hors d'oeuvres. I found myself telling her about my new job, and unlike my family, she actually listened. Her eyes lit up when I explained the technical aspects of my work. She asked real questions, not the dismissive kind I was used to. The chemistry was immediate and undeniable. We spent the entire party together, tucked away in a corner, talking about everything from our favorite books to our career ambitions. She worked as a graphic designer and showed me some of her portfolio on her phone. Her creativity amazed me. Then Jess spotted us. I watched my sister's face transform as she recognized who I was talking to. Her practiced smile faltered for just a moment before she composed herself and glided over in her designer heels. She air-kissed Catherine's cheek with the enthusiasm of someone greeting their dentist. The conversation that followed was painfully awkward. Jess kept making subtle digs about their shared past, mentioning parties Catherine hadn't been invited to, and inside jokes that pointedly excluded her. Catherine handled it with grace, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. After Jess finally left to corner some other guest, Catherine turned to me with an apologetic smile. She explained that she and Jess had a falling out years ago when she refused to go along with one of my sister's schemes to humiliate another friend. That was all I needed to hear. We exchanged numbers that night. Our first date was the following weekend. Nothing fancy, just coffee and a walk in the park. It was perfect. Catherine was everything my family had taught me I didn't deserve. Kind, intelligent, genuinely interested in who I was as a person. The backlash started immediately. Jess began texting me constantly, something she hadn't done in years. Her messages ranged from fake concern, I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into, to outright lies about Catherine's past. She claimed Catherine had stolen from her, spread rumors about her, even tried to seduce one of her boyfriends. When I asked for specifics, she became evasive. At the next family dinner, my parents suddenly became very interested in my love life. My mother grilled me about Catherine's family background, her education, her career prospects. When I mentioned she was a freelance designer, my father scoffed. Freelance? So unemployed with extra steps? Jess sat there with a satisfied smirk, occasionally adding helpful comments like, she always was a bit unstable, and I tried to help her back in college, but some people just can't be helped. Despite their efforts, Catherine and I continued dating. She made me happier than I'd been in years. For the first time, I had someone who celebrated my achievements instead of diminishing them. When I got a raise, she took me out to dinner. When I had a bad day, she actually listened without making it about herself. The manipulation escalated. Jess started showing up at places she knew we'd be. Once we ran into her at a restaurant 40 minutes from her house, a place she'd somehow discovered we had reservations at. She acted surprised, then invited herself to join us with Dwight in tow. They spent the entire meal talking over us, with Jess reminiscing about college parties and making Catherine visibly uncomfortable. My parents began planning family events on days they knew I had plans with Catherine. When I couldn't attend, they'd guilt me about choosing some girl over family. When I did bring Catherine, they'd spend the entire time making her feel unwelcome. My mother would forget to set a place for her at dinner. My father would pointedly ignore her attempts at conversation. 3 months into our relationship, things took a darker turn. Catherine started receiving anonymous messages on social media. Old photos from college edited to make her look bad, fake screenshots of conversations she'd never had. The messages came from throwaway accounts, but I had my suspicions. Then came the incident at Jess's birthday party. My parents insisted I attend, and Catherine graciously agreed to come with me despite everything. The moment we arrived, I knew something was wrong. Jess was practically glowing with anticipation. Halfway through the party, Jess clinked her glass for attention. She announced she had a funny story to share about her college days. What followed was a carefully crafted narrative about a friend who had tried to steal her identity, ruin her reputation, and destroy her life. She never said Catherine's name, but her eyes never left her face. Catherine excused herself to the bathroom. I found her there 10 minutes later, tears streaming down her face. She told me the real story, how Jess had used her social security number to open credit cards, nearly destroying her credit before she discovered it. When she confronted Jess privately, my sister had threatened to spread lies about her if she told anyone. I was furious, but when I confronted Jess, she played innocent. I wasn't talking about Catherine. I'm really curious about why the parents chose such a strange way to deal with their son's testosterone levels. Using his sister to somehow fix a medical condition seems like such an odd choice when doctors exist. Why would she think that? Unless, oh my god, did she actually do those things? My parents predictably took Jess's side. My mother pulled me aside to express her concerns about Catherine's reaction. My father suggested I might want to reconsider this relationship before things got too serious, but their tactics were starting to backfire. The more they pushed, the more I saw Catherine's strength and integrity in contrast to my family's manipulation. She never asked me to choose between her and them. She never badmouthed them, even when she had every right to. She simply stood by me, offering support without judgment. The relationship deepened despite every obstacle they threw our way. Catherine met my work friends, who immediately loved her. She introduced me to her family, normal, supportive people who welcomed me warmly. For the first time, I experienced what healthy family dynamics looked like. Jess's attempts grew more desperate. She started calling Catherine's clients, pretending to be checking references, but actually spreading subtle doubts about her professionalism. Catherine lost lost 2 contracts before we figured out what was happening. Dwight, it turned out, was helping by using his sales connections to find out who Catherine was working with. The evidence was right there on Catherine's laptop screen. I watched her scroll through the call logs from her biggest client, showing multiple calls from numbers that trace back to Dwight's company. Catherine's hands trembled as she showed me the timeline. Each call happened right before she lost a contract. I drove straight to my parents' house that evening. My mother was arranging flowers in the kitchen while my father read his newspaper in the living room. I laid out the printed call logs on the kitchen counter. My mother glanced at them briefly before turning back to her flowers. My father didn't even look up from his paper. The following week, Catherine received notice that her lease wouldn't be renewed. Her landlord mumbled something about property renovations, but the timing was too convenient. I helped her search for new apartments, but every application got mysteriously delayed or rejected. One property manager accidentally let slip that someone had called asking about her rental history, claiming to be a previous landlord. Catherine moved in with me temporarily. My apartment was small, but we made it work. She set up her design workspace in the corner of the living room, transforming it into a creative haven. Despite everything, she kept working, kept creating, kept moving forward. Jess escalated her tactics. She started posting old photos on social media, carefully curated to paint a specific narrative. Pictures from college parties where Catherine looked tired became evidence of wild behavior. Group photos were cropped to exclude Catherine, with captions about real friends. Each post gathered likes and comments from Jess's followers, none of whom knew the real story. My work life became a target too. My boss mentioned receiving strange calls asking about my performance and reliability. Fortunately, my track record spoke for itself, but the calls kept coming. HR eventually traced them to various numbers, all dead ends, but the pattern was clear. Family dinners became interrogations. My mother would spend the entire meal asking pointed questions about Catherine's work situation, her living arrangements, her future plans. My father would make comments about stability and making smart choices. Jess would sit there looking concerned, occasionally mentioning how worried she was about me. Catherine suggested we skip the next few family gatherings. I agreed, but that only made things worse. My parents started showing up unannounced. They'd arrive at my apartment on Sunday mornings, expressing concern about my absence from family events. They'd look around disapprovingly at Catherine's work setup, making comments about the apartment being crowded. During one of these surprise visits, my mother noticed Catherine's portfolio on the coffee table. She flipped through it dismissively, then suddenly stopped at one particular design. Her face changed, and she quickly closed the portfolio. Later, Catherine discovered that same design had been posted on a competitor's website, slightly modified but clearly stolen. The theft was traced back to an email account that had requested her portfolio for a potential project weeks earlier. The email had come from a domain registered to a company that, after some digging, had connections to one of Dwight's business associates. Catherine's resilience amazed me. Instead of breaking down, she documented everything. She started watermarking her work, keeping detailed records of every client interaction, every strange occurrence. She rebuilt her client base slowly, working twice as hard to overcome the sabotage. I confronted Dwight directly one evening when I knew Jess would be at her yoga class. He answered the door with his usual salesman smile, but it faltered when he saw my expression. I presented him with the evidence of the calls to Catherine's clients. He stammered through denials, but his face told a different story. The confrontation achieved nothing concrete, but it sent a message. The calls to Catherine's clients stopped, though the family pressure intensified. My parents began talking about inheritance, about family legacy, about the importance of choosing the right life partner. The implications were clear. Jess tried a new approach. She started befriending Catherine's remaining clients at networking events, subtly positioning herself as an alternative designer. She mentioned her experience in graphic design, though she'd never worked in the field. She'd drop hints about reliability issues with other designers, never naming names but making implications. Catherine and I developed strategies to counter each move. We attended networking events together, with me introducing her to contacts from my industry. We documented every interaction with Jess, every suspicious incident. We built a support network of friends who knew the truth. My relationship with my parents deteriorated further. Phone calls became lectures about family loyalty and making the right choices. They started mentioning other women they thought would be suitable for me, daughters of their friends who had stable careers and good families. The breaking point came at my cousin's wedding. Catherine and I arrived to find we'd been seated at separate tables. The seating chart had supposedly been changed at the last minute due to space issues. I was placed at the family table, while Catherine was relegated to a back corner with distant relatives no one really knew. I switched the place cards myself, sitting with Catherine despite my mother's visible displeasure. Throughout the reception, family members kept approaching our table, but not to talk to us. They spoke over us, around us, as if Catherine wasn't there. My aunt made a point of discussing Jess's latest business venture while standing directly between Catherine and me. Jess gave a toast that night, ostensibly for the bride and groom, but filled with veiled references to loyalty, choosing the right partner, and the importance of family approval. She maintained eye contact with me throughout, her smile never reaching her eyes. After the wedding, Catherine broke down in the car, not from sadness, but from exhaustion. The constant pressure, the subtle attacks, the need to always be on guard, it was wearing on both of us. We sat in the parking lot for an hour, discussing our options. We decided to take control of the narrative. Catherine started a blog about her design work, sharing her creative process and showcasing her portfolio. She wrote honestly about the challenges of freelancing, without mentioning the sabotage directly. The blog gained traction, attracting new clients who appreciated her transparency and talent. I reduced contact with my family to essential interactions only. Birthdays, major holidays, emergencies. Each boundary I set was met with guilt trips and manipulation attempts. My mother would call crying about how I was breaking her heart. My father would send emails about disappointment and family values. Jess, meanwhile, was struggling. Her boutique idea never materialized, despite my parents' financial support. She pivoted to becoming a lifestyle consultant, then a wellness coach, then a social media influencer. Each venture failed when it required actual work and expertise. Dwight's true nature began showing. Without the constant drama of sabotaging Catherine to occupy them, cracks appeared in their marriage. He spent more time at work, coming home later and later. Jess complained to anyone who would listen about feeling neglected, though she never made the connection to how they treated others. Catherine's business began thriving again. Word of mouth from satisfied clients outweighed any negative rumors. She landed a major contract with a tech startup, designing their entire brand identity. The success was entirely her own, earned through talent and perseverance. My parents couldn't handle it. They increased their attempts to break us up, becoming less subtle with each try. They offered to pay off my student loans if I would reconsider my choices. They suggested family therapy, but only if Catherine wasn't included. They even staged an intervention, bringing in extended family to express their concerns. During the intervention, something unexpected happened. My uncle, who had been quiet throughout, suddenly spoke up. He revealed that he'd witnessed some of Jess's behavior over the years. The lies, the manipulation, the way my parents enabled her. He kept quiet to maintain family peace, but he couldn't watch it anymore. His revelation opened floodgates. Other family members began sharing their own observations. My cousin mentioned how Jess had tried to sabotage her engagement by spreading rumors about her fiancé. Talk about family gatherings going from awkward to someone call a documentary crew level drama. The uncle dropping truth bombs after years of silence is like finding out the quiet kid in class was keeping receipts the whole time. My aunt recalled Jess taking credit for charity work she'd never done. Pattern after pattern emerged. My parents sat in stunned silence as their carefully constructed narrative crumbled. Jess wasn't there. She'd conveniently developed a migraine that morning, but Dwight was, and his expression grew increasingly uncomfortable as the stories mounted. The intervention ended with my parents in tears, though I couldn't tell if they were tears of recognition or just upset that their plan had backfired. They asked everyone to leave, and I haven't heard from them since that day. Catherine and I grew stronger through each challenge. We learned to recognize manipulation tactics immediately, to support each other without question, to build boundaries that protected our peace. Her business continued growing, and my career advanced on its own merits. Jess made one last attempt to cause trouble. She created a fake social media profile impersonating Catherine, posting inflammatory content to damage her professional reputation. But we'd anticipated this move. Catherine had already secured her online presence, and the fake profile was quickly reported and removed. The investigation into the fake profile revealed something interesting. The IP address traced back to Dwight's work computer. Whether it was him or Jess using his access, the evidence was clear. Catherine chose not to pursue legal action, but she did send a formal cease and desist letter through a lawyer friend. The letter had an immediate effect. All harassment stopped overnight. No more anonymous messages, no more mysterious calls to clients, no more coincidental encounters. The silence was almost unsettling after months of constant attacks. I received one final communication from my family, a letter from my mother. She wrote about disappointment and broken hearts, about choosing outsiders over blood, about the pain I'd caused. She ended by saying I would always be welcome back when I came to my senses, and left Catherine. I kept the letter as a reminder, not of what I'd lost, but of what I gained. Freedom from manipulation, a partner who truly supported me, and the knowledge that family isn't defined by blood, but by how people treat each other. Catherine's latest project was her biggest yet, a complete rebrand for a national nonprofit. She worked long hours, pouring her creativity into every detail. I supported her however I could, bringing her meals during late work sessions, celebrating small victories, being the cheerleader my family never was for me. Success attracted attention. Other designers began reaching out to Catherine for collaboration opportunities. She built a network of creative professionals who respected her work and ethics. The community she created stood in stark contrast to the toxic environment my family perpetuated. We started talking about the future, making plans that didn't revolve around defending ourselves from attacks. We discussed travel, career goals, maybe starting our own family someday. Each conversation reinforced how much we'd grown through the adversity. The universe seemed to balance itself. While Catherine and I built our life together, Jess and Dwight's marriage crumbled. Social media posts about their perfect life became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Mutual acquaintances mentioned seeing them arguing in public, the facade finally cracking under its own weight. My parents reached out once more, asking me to support Jess through her divorce. They seemed to have forgotten all the pain she'd caused, focusing only on their golden child's current suffering. I declined politely but firmly, maintaining the boundaries that protected my peace. Catherine never gloated about Jess's misfortune. She simply continued building her business, creating beautiful designs, and living her life with integrity. Her example taught me more about strength and character than my family ever did. Work became a refuge and a source of pride. My colleagues respected my contributions, and my superiors recognized my potential. I earned a promotion to team lead, a position that came with real responsibilities and opportunities for growth. Catherine celebrated with me genuinely, making a special dinner and toasting to future successes. We moved to a larger apartment, one with dedicated space for Catherine's studio and room to breathe. Decorating our new home together felt like building a life free from the shadows of my past. Every choice we made was ours alone, unclouded by family expectations or manipulations. Occasionally, I'd hear updates about my family through the grapevine. Jess had moved back in with my parents after the divorce. She was trying another new career, this time as a life coach, which would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. My parents continued enabling her, pouring money into each failed venture. Catherine suggested we try therapy, not because our relationship needed it, but to process everything we'd been through. We found a therapist who specialized in family trauma and manipulation. Through our sessions, I began understanding the deeper patterns of my upbringing, how the favoritism and emotional neglect had shaped me. The therapy revealed how much I'd normalized toxic behavior. What I'd accepted as typical family dynamics were actually forms of abuse. Learning to recognize and name these patterns gave me power over them. I could see manipulation attempts coming from miles away and shut them down before they took root. Catherine went through her own healing process. The betrayal by someone she'd once considered a friend, followed by months of harassment, had left marks, but she worked through them with the same determination she brought to everything else in her life. We established new traditions, just the two of us. Sunday morning farmers market visits, monthly museum trips, cooking elaborate meals together on Friday nights. Each tradition was a small act of building the life we wanted, free from toxic influences. My work performance continued improving without the constant family drama draining my energy. I spearheaded a major project that saved the company significant money, earning recognition from senior management. The success felt even sweeter because it was mine alone, unconnected to family name or connections. Catherine's reputation in the design community grew to the point where clients sought her out specifically. She raised her rates to reflect her expertise, and clients gladly paid them. The girl my family had dismissed as unstable and unemployable was now turning down projects because her schedule was full. We attended industry events together, supporting each other's professional growth. At one such event, we encountered someone who knew both Jess and Catherine from college. After a few drinks, she revealed more stories about Jess's behavior, patterns of manipulation and credit stealing that went back years. These revelations no longer surprised me, but they did reinforce our decision to maintain distance. Every story confirmed that Jess's behavior wasn't new or specifically targeted at Catherine. It was who she'd always been, enabled and encouraged by our parents' blind favoritism. Life settled into a rhythm free from crisis. We woke up each morning without dreading what new attack might come. We made plans without having to consider how my family might sabotage them. We lived authentically, choosing our own path without apology. The contrast between our life and my family's became increasingly stark. While we built something real together, they remained trapped in their toxic patterns. Jess cycled through another relationship, this time with someone who seemed to see through her facade quickly. My parents aged rapidly, the stress of maintaining their delusions taking its toll. I felt sad sometimes, mourning the family I'd never really had, but the sadness was clean, uncomplicated by guilt or obligation. Catherine understood these moments, holding space for my grief while reminding me of the love and support I'd found elsewhere. Our friend circle expanded to include other couples who dealt with toxic families. We shared stories, strategies, and support. The community we built was based on mutual respect and genuine care, everything my biological family wasn't. Catherine landed her dream project, designing the visual identity for a social justice organization she'd admired for years. The work aligned with her values and showcased her skills perfectly. Watching her present her designs to the board, confident and brilliant, filled me with pride my parents had never shown for my achievements. We celebrated privately that night, just the two of us. No family drama to overshadow the moment, no backhanded compliments or immediate comparisons to Jess, just pure joy for Catherine's success and our life together. The peace we'd fought for felt precious because we knew its cost. Every boundary we'd set, every manipulation we'd resisted, every attack we'd weathered had led to this life we'd built. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, created through love and mutual respect rather than obligation and fear. Looking forward, we saw possibilities rather than obstacles. Catherine talked about potentially starting her own design firm. I considered pursuing an advanced degree to further my career. We discussed these dreams as partners, each supporting the other's ambitions without competition or sabotage. The family I'd grown up in had taught me what love wasn't. Through their favoritism, manipulation, and emotional neglect, they'd shown me exactly what to avoid. Catherine had taught me what love was: support without conditions, celebration without jealousy, partnership without power struggles. Our story was still being written, but the chapters filled with family drama were closing. What lay ahead was ours to determine, free from the toxic influences that had once threatened to destroy us. We'd survived the worst they could throw at us and emerged stronger, together, and finally free. Something about this IP address discovery feels too convenient. Dwight's work computer being the source. The timing of everything stopping right after that legal letter makes me wonder if there's more to who was really behind those fake profiles than we're seeing here. The morning after the cease and desist letter was delivered, I woke to find Catherine already at her computer, working on a new project. She landed another client through her blog, someone who specifically mentioned appreciating her authentic approach to design. I made coffee and watched her work, marveling at how she transformed our living room corner into a professional studio. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was brief, asking me to meet at a coffee shop downtown. The sender identified themselves as Dwight's co-worker, claiming to have information about the harassment campaign. Catherine and I exchanged glances before I agreed to the meeting. The coffee shop was crowded when I arrived. A nervous-looking man in his 30s waved me over to a corner table. He introduced himself as Marcus, explaining that he'd worked with Dwight for 3 years. Over the next hour, he laid out everything he'd witnessed. Dwight using company resources to make those calls, bragging about helping his wife put someone in their place, even showing off the fake social media profiles during lunch breaks. Marcus handed me a flash drive containing screenshots and recordings he'd secretly made. He explained that he'd been documenting everything after Dwight tried to rope him into the scheme. The evidence was overwhelming, showing not just Dwight's involvement, but Jess's direct participation through messages and emails. I thanked Marcus and headed home with the flash drive. Catherine and I spent the evening reviewing the files, creating backups, and organizing everything chronologically. The sheer scope of their campaign was staggering. Months of coordinated attacks designed to destroy Catherine's career and our relationship. The next family gathering was my grandmother's 85th birthday. Catherine and I debated attending, but ultimately decided to go. My grandmother had always been kind to me, and I wanted to celebrate her milestone. We arrived to find the party already in full swing, with Jess holding court near the gift table. My parents greeted us coldly, barely acknowledging Catherine's presence. We found seats near my grandmother, who squeezed my hand warmly and complimented Catherine's dress. For a while, the party proceeded normally, with cake and presents and distant relatives catching up. Then Jess approached our table, Dwight trailing behind her. She made a show of examining Catherine's outfit, making subtle comments about affordability and taste. Catherine remained composed, focusing on her conversation with my grandmother. Jess's frustration at being ignored was visible. The situation escalated when Jess accidentally knocked over her wine glass, splashing red wine across Catherine's portfolio bag. She apologized with exaggerated concern, dabbing at the bag with napkins while making it worse. Catherine simply moved the bag away and continued eating her cake. Dwight, emboldened by alcohol, started making increasingly bold comments about Catherine's business. He mentioned specific clients by name, wondering aloud about their satisfaction levels. Each comment matched information from Marcus's files, confirming everything we'd learned. My uncle, the same one who'd spoken up during the intervention, noticed the tension. He moved closer to our table, positioning himself as a buffer. His wife joined him, creating a protective circle around us. Other family members began noticing the dynamics, whispering among themselves. Jess, realizing she was losing control of the situation, tried a different approach. She announced loudly that she had exciting news to share. Everyone turned to look as she revealed her latest venture, a design consultancy that would help small businesses with their branding needs. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew the full story. My grandmother, sharp despite her age, asked pointed questions about Jess's qualifications and experience. Jess fumbled through vague responses about natural talent and fresh perspectives. My grandmother's expression grew increasingly skeptical with each answer. Catherine excused herself to the restroom. I followed shortly after, finding her in the hallway taking deep breaths. We didn't need words. I simply held her hand until she felt ready to return. Together, we walked back into the party, heads high. The remainder of the party passed in a blur of forced conversations and tense silences. As we prepared to leave, my grandmother pulled me aside. She pressed something into my hand, a check made out to Catherine's business. She whispered that she'd been following Catherine's blog and was impressed by her work. Outside, Catherine and I sat in the car for a moment, processing everything. The check from my grandmother wasn't just money, it was validation, a sign that not everyone in my family was blind to the truth. We drove home in comfortable silence, both lost in thought. The following week brought unexpected developments. Marcus called to inform me that Dwight had been placed on administrative leave after the company discovered his misuse of resources. Apparently, their IT department had been investigating unusual phone patterns for weeks before Marcus came forward. Catherine's business received a surge of new inquiries. Several came from people who'd heard about her through my grandmother, who'd apparently been singing her praises at her senior center. Others came through her blog, where her honest posts about overcoming professional challenges resonated with fellow freelancers. I received a promotion at work, moving into a senior management position. The raise was substantial, finally allowing us to start saving for a house. Catherine and I celebrated quietly at home, cooking dinner together and planning our future. No family drama, no comparisons to Jess, just genuine happiness for our success. Jess's design consultancy lasted exactly 3 weeks. Without actual skills or experience, she couldn't deliver on her promises. Her first and only client, a friend of my mother's, politely declined to continue after seeing Jess's design concepts, poorly copied templates from online sources. My parents' attempts to blame Catherine for Jess's failure were met with unexpected resistance from extended family. My uncle shared the evidence he gathered over the years. My cousin revealed messages where Jess had tried to sabotage our wedding. My grandmother simply stated that she was disappointed in how my parents had handled everything. The family dynamic shifted dramatically. Relatives who'd previously stayed neutral began reaching out to me directly, bypassing my parents. Invitations to cousins' gatherings arrived addressed to Catherine and me specifically. Family group texts started excluding my parents and Jess when planning casual get-togethers. Dwight's termination from his company became official after their investigation concluded. Without his income and with his reputation damaged, he moved back in with his parents. Jess followed shortly after, turning my childhood home into a tense environment filled with 3 adults who'd never learned accountability. Catherine's portfolio caught the attention of a major design firm looking for freelance collaborators. The initial project was small, but it opened doors to larger opportunities. She maintained her independence while building relationships with established industry players. Her rates increased again, justified by her growing reputation and expertise. We found a small house in a quiet neighborhood, using our combined savings for the down payment. The day we got the keys, we stood in the empty living room, envisioning our future. Catherine immediately claimed a room for her studio, while I planned where my home office would go. Moving day arrived with unexpected help. My uncle showed up with his truck, my cousin brought boxes, and my grandmother sent lunch for everyone. Notably absent were my parents and Jess, who learned about the move through social media rather than from me directly. The housewarming party we threw was small but meaningful. Catherine's family came, along with our close friends and the relatives who'd supported us. My grandmother held court in the living room, regaling everyone with embarrassing stories from my childhood that actually showed love rather than mockery. Work continued to flourish for both of us. I led a team that developed an innovative solution, saving the company significant money annually. Catherine landed a contract with a non-profit she'd long admired, creating designs that aligned with her values. We supported each other's victories without jealousy or competition. 6 months after moving, I received a letter from my mother. Unlike her previous dramatic missives, this one was brief and businesslike. She informed me that they were downsizing houses and asked if I wanted any childhood items before they disposed of them. I declined politely, having already taken anything meaningful when I first moved out. Catherine's blog evolved into a resource hub for freelance designers. She shared templates, contracts, and advice based on her experiences. The community she built became self-sustaining, with members supporting each other through challenges. Her influence grew organically, based on genuine expertise rather than manufactured drama. The news of my parents selling their house spread through the family grapevine. Years of supporting Jess's failed ventures and Dwight's unemployment had drained their savings. They moved to a modest apartment, a far cry from the house where they'd hosted elaborate parties celebrating Jess's mediocrity. Catherine and I established our own traditions in our new home. Sunday breakfast on the patio, evening walks through the neighborhood, hosting game nights for friends. Each tradition reinforced the life we built together, free from toxic influences and manipulation. Professional recognition came naturally to both of us. Catherine received an award from a local design association for her innovative work. Marcus showing up with a flash drive full of evidence is like watching someone bring receipts to a gossip session, except these receipts could actually get someone fired, which is exactly what happened to poor Dwight, who apparently forgot his company monitor's phone usage. I was featured in an industry publication for leading successful projects. Neither achievement required family connections or manufactured drama, just hard work and genuine talent. The final communication from my family came through Jess, who sent a long email detailing her struggles and asking for financial help. She blamed everyone except herself, Catherine for ruining her reputation, Dwight for not supporting her dreams, our parents for not giving her enough resources. I deleted the email without responding. Catherine's latest project launched to critical acclaim within the design community. The visual identity she created for a social justice organization perfectly captured their mission and values. Watching her receive recognition from peers who respected her work filled me with pride my family never showed. Our life settled into comfortable rhythms. Morning coffee together before work, evening debriefs about our days, weekend projects around the house. The drama and chaos of the past felt like a distant memory, replaced by genuine partnership and mutual support. Looking at Catherine working in her studio, sunlight streaming through the windows of our home, I felt profound gratitude. The family I'd grown up in had tried to convince me I deserved less, that I should accept manipulation and favoritism as normal. Instead, I found someone who showed me what real love looked like. The success we built wasn't measured in dramatic victories or public vindication. It was in the quiet moments. Catherine's laugh over breakfast, the satisfaction of completing challenging projects, the peace of a home free from judgment. We'd won not by defeating my family, but by building something they could never understand or destroy. Our story wasn't ending. It was really just beginning. But the chapters filled with toxic family dynamics were closed. What stretched ahead was a future we'd write together, defined by our choices rather than others' expectations. The freedom to live authentically, love genuinely, and succeed on our own terms was the greatest victory of all. Thanks for letting me dig into all these questions with you today. Even if we didn't land on every answer, the ride was totally worth it. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.